Hey guys, so I wanted to take a few minutes and kind of tell you about my first deal, my first real estate deal, where it all started. And why is that important? Because it was a long time ago. Well, the reason is that this economy is starting to become so similar to the economy under which I bought my first property. Now, at the time, I was selling real estate. I was in business with my father. We had opened up a small real estate practice, and I was a salesperson, and we were selling real estate in the area. Now, I just had my first son, Jonathan. I was married, had a child. Okay, we were renting an apartment. At the time, I think the apartment was $180 a month. Okay, but it was a one bedroom, walk up, small, giant centipedes walking across the frickin' floor every once in a while. The cat would just, they thought they were mice. All right. Anyhow, it was time to move. And so I went out and I started looking for a property. Now, you got to remember, at the time, interest rates at that time had gone from 9.5%. They had spent all through the 1970s moving up from 6 to 9.5. And then after Paul Volcker came in as the Federal Reserve Chairman, he jumped those interest rates so high that the interest rate on mortgages had gone to 16.5%. Now that was crushing the real estate market, right? Now, what I mean by crushing it, it was crushing the sales. Properties probably fell 10, 15%, not too much more than that, because sellers just stopped selling. What's happening now? That's why it's so similar. And buyers no longer could afford the mortgage payment until home prices had started to fall. And that's what was going on at the time. So I couldn't afford a lot because we had just started a business. I was 25 years old. It was in the real estate business, which was moving pretty damn slow. And so I went out, I bought a 2-bedroom ranch. I don't think it was more than 700 square feet total. No basement. What really made it work was that it was laid out like an apartment. It was laid out, 2 bedrooms on one side, a utility room, the bathroom, down a hallway, and then you had your kitchen, your living room. So it was laid out properly. It wasn't all rooms off of a main hallway. Now, that being said, I had to buy the darn thing. I think I paid $32,000 or $33,000 for it. I bought it on contract. Okay, what does that mean? That means the seller held the financing because they were trying to sell it. The place was a dump. It took 3 weeks to get it to where it needed to be. I put a lot of personal work into it. I believe my father had helped me. My brother had helped me. We all kind of went in there and got it ready. Fortunately, it was pretty small, so it didn't take that much work, but everything needed to be touched. I remember we had to seal the floors. Why? Because the dog had been pissed. The dog before that had moved in the house that had been there for years was pissing on the floor. So we had to kills primer the entire flooring. Just had to do it. We even put visqueen plastic over the top of that before we put down the new tile. So these are things you do in order to move past and get on and make the house livable. But in my mind, I was looking for that property that would be my first rental property. Yes, it had to serve a purpose to be the first house I moved my family into. But the reason I went so small is because number one, I couldn't afford much higher. But number two, it made for a great little rental eventually. We moved into that house. After we got it closed, we did the contract sale on it. Again, the seller held the financing. We didn't do a purchase money mortgage where the deed would have been passed at the time. So what I did is I made sure that the seller put the deed in escrow in case the seller passed away. So as long as I made the payments, it was a 5-year term, went out and refinanced it at the end of the 5 years, and then I paid him the rest of the money I owed him. It was a 5-year balloon, as they call it. All right, so if you ever do a contract sale, talk to your lawyer. Make sure that if you do that, you get that deed put into escrow so that in case the guy or the lady passes during the time in which you own that contract, you're not in there fighting in the courts to get that deed signed. Just a little side note. But that's what we had done. I went in there. Now, where did I screw up? I never even showed my wife the house first. I put it under contract because it was what I wanted for the rental property. So I would advise that if you're married, show your spouse the damn house so that you don't have to hear about it for the next 40 years. Okay. So, but we stayed in that house. I fixed up the house. I then used that house to be the first home of a rental property, right? That's where it translated. So I borrowed the down payment from that house to buy the next house, and then I moved out of that house into the next house, which was going to be another rental property, although I did show my wife that house the next time. So I borrowed the down payment from the existing house, put it into to buy the next house, and then put tenants into that house. That was my first rental property. Now, unfortunately, I fell asleep for a while because I was building the real estate business, the brokerage business, and I ended up staying there many years beyond what I wanted to do. And then one day I woke up and I said, hey, I am done watching football on Saturdays. I am done watching football on Sundays. I got to get my ass in gear and start building the wealth side of it, not just building a business. But it all started with that first house. It all started with that first rental property that was in my head. And in the worst economic conditions, I went out and bought a house. There is always opportunity. Some of the best opportunity is when the economy is in horrible condition. Paid $33,000 in that house. By the time I eventually sold that house, I sold it for like $120. On a percentage basis, it was one of the best investments I ever made. It took years after the market crashed in 2008, because I sold it just before then, for the guy to get that price back up again. Now it is, obviously, but I bought it at the right time and I sold it at the right time. Now, it doesn't always work that way, but when you can make that happen, it makes for a great investment, right? So that's where I started. I started with 1 2-bedroom house with no basement, with a 1.5 car garage that had a gravel driveway that needed to be re-sided, needed a new roof. Every room needed to be redone, painted, whatever, but we did it all. And the nice thing about starting with a smaller house is that I could handle a lot of the work with a friend or a relative. It was never overbearing, okay? So make sure that one of the things I would advise people to do is on your first property, don't go buy that house that's fallen freaking down. Get something that you can handle. And when the markets are down the way they're moving down now, you get nicer houses for a lesser price. So that's kind of the beginning story of how I first bought my first property. What's your story going to be like? What is your first property going to be like? Are you going to be buying that property with the idea of making it your first rental property? Maybe it's a duplex. It doesn't have to be a single family home. I wasn't into duplexes and multifamily at the time. But gosh, guys, there's a lot more information out there now. If I was going to do it all over again, that would have been a duplex or a triplex or a quad. Why? Because you can borrow the money from FHA and they'll finance it under a residential mortgage and they'll use the other rents to help you qualify for your payment. Now, we'll talk about that more in another video. But even though I was thinking big to think about my first rental property as the first purchase of a first house, I was thinking so small relative to the number of units I could have bought. Does that make sense? So take advantage of the opportunities. And not all economies are the same. Like Mark Twain said, history rhymes. It doesn't just duplicate itself. It's similar, but it's always a little different. So if money is available at the banks in this economy, then use FHA. If it tightens up or the interest rates get so high, well, then sellers will start to offer their properties at lower interest rates on contract sales, on purchase money mortgage deals, okay? Owner financing with smaller amounts of money down with lower interest rates. Why? Because they want to sell the freaking thing, because it's not 2020 anymore. It'll soon be 2023. And the real estate market is in the freaking tank and going deeper. But boy, it makes me smile because that's opportunity. Look at this next movement in the stock market and in the real estate market as being opportunity, because that's what you're going to see. Take advantage of where the advantage can be taken. That doesn't mean you're taking advantage of people. You're taking advantage of opportunities that you had nothing to do and the creation of those opportunities, but you can prosper from them. All investments can be good investments, but you got to invest in them at the right time. Like buying the stock market, December 29th or 31st, okay, of 2021 was a horrible moment to buy the stock market. Why? Because the next 6 months it tanked. It was the worst start of the stock market in all of history. Does that mean the stock market's necessarily bad? No, it doesn't mean that bad at all. But timing was like buying real estate in 2006 and paying top dollar for it. Or buying a house in Arizona last year and paying top dollar for it. Phoenix, Scottsdale, Miami Beach. Loving those places, baby. But it was the wrong time. And there were plenty of people telling you it was the wrong freaking time. Now, it's getting better and better. Is it the right time? Maybe not. But it's time to be putting knowledge into your head. Time to be learning. Time to be saving. Getting that seed money. Putting together a group of people that want to invest with you. Talking to your family. All these things are reasons where you can get how to get that first property. And even if you don't have anybody helping you, that's what we're here for. To help you. Give you the knowledge, the wisdom. Share some of the wisdom. What is wisdom? It's knowledge and time put together with application and failure and success. That's what you got to be thinking about. That's who you got to be looking at to give you the information you need in order to move forward. Am I telling people to go out and buy property right now? Absolutely not. Real estate is slow to go up, it's slow to roll over, it's slow to go down. And it takes time once it's down there. And there'll be a lot of time to put money to work. When do I think that's going to happen? Oh, I don't know. Anytime within the next 8 months to 10 months, 12 months, maybe this time next year. Do I think real estate interest rates are going to continue to go up? Probably. because they're still going to fight inflation. Yes, they said they might slow the increases. That's okay, but you might see 9% interest rates on mortgages. So how do I go buy a house when interest rates are 9% when they used to be 2.5%? Well, you're going to pay a lot less for it, number one. Number two, you might get some owner financing. Or number three, you may pay the interest rate at the time as long as you got the cash flow. We'll talk more about cash flow later, because what happens after the interest rates go up? Well, then they pull back. Okay, last month they went from 7.5 to 6.5. They said that 1 point was one of the biggest drops they'd ever seen in the period of time in which it happened. But that's shit. We're going to still see it go higher. We know that. That's just because people stopped what? Buying houses. For what purpose? To live in them. But what is the purpose you're going to buy? It might be to initially live there, but it's your investment property. Or you're just going to buy an investment property. But it's going to be your first. It might be your second, your third, whatever it is. Take advantage of it. Why? Because you can always refinance that interest rate when it comes down, as long as the cash flow is positive and making you some money. Because then when rates come back down again, you can refinance it because you locked in that purchase price at the lowest it had been in years, and now you're going to refinance that interest rate down as interest rates drop. But do you want to do that now? I don't think so. You might get to some pain, some suffering, because we're nowhere near the bottom of this yet. Typically, a recession that comes after an inflationary period, and we don't even know if we're totally through the inflationary period yet. We don't know about that yet. And if we're not, this can go on for a while. These kinds of recessions, they start slow and they go slow, and the real estate prices start dropping. Now, if the real estate property starts dropping 10, 15, 20%, that's great. Are those the houses you're going to look for? No, because the home buyers won't be there. Most of the investors won't be there because they're all fully invested. But you can get in, and you're going to be looking for that house where someone inherited it, or it's going into foreclosure, and you can pick it up for 30, 35, 40% down. That duplex is down 40% because they overpaid for it last year and the year before that. And now you're going to get it. You're going to buy it, but you're going to buy it at 35% less. Those are the opportunities you're going to be looking for, not just to buy the house that's down 10 or 15%. That's what you're going to learn when you're following someone like myself. Why? Because I invested through this kind of an economy before. It was a long time ago. For some of you guys, it was before your parents were even born. I don't know if that's possible, but it is. It was 1979, 1980, 1981, 1982. This is the last time we had this kind of an economy. Most people who are out there talking real estate never lived through this freaking kind of economy before. They only know one thing: it going up. Well, going up, that's sweet, but you got to know how to survive when it's going down. And then if you have never gotten into it yet, then you got to know when to pull the trigger when it's down there. So to learn more about how to pull the trigger when it's down there, what does it take? To learn more about what it takes to stay in the game. If you bought last year, the year before, paid too much, how to stay in the game, then follow us on our Instagram page. That's V. Rigoni, high performance real estate entrepreneur. That's a little bit of my story, a little bit of my experience, but to learn a lot more, see us there. Talk to you soon. Let's make it happen, baby. Let's get out there.